This fucking NDA, and I've been trying not to swear in recent videos because of fucking YouTube, but this NDA is an absolute travesty. And let me start immediately with a strident condemnation. If any content creators, be it YouTube or a website, or worst of all, a reviewer who pretends to review Games Workshop products has signed this, then they are the enemy of all customers everywhere, and nothing more than a knowingly malicious and deeply misleading propaganda outlet in the employ of GW. It is that bad and worse. With that out of the way though, let me just also point something out. We do not know for absolutely certain that this is an actual Games Workshop NDA. It was released on the Reddit, and we cannot be certain that this is actually the NDA. And I'll tell you two things here. First and foremost, I've been on the receiving end of a fair few NDAs in my time, and I've written a fair few as well. I have never seen anything like this. Never. Ever. Yet at the same time, it is written in the kind of legalese nonsense that I would absolutely expect to see in a document that tries to do something as absurd as this. And just to give you a little bit of a snippet here, this document states that the person who signs it cannot say basically anything negative about Games Workshop, and that they can sue you if you do, and they can require you to pay for their legal fees whilst suing you. If I was a literally rotten to the core evil corporation who wanted to create actual propaganda slaves and also bind them to secrecy about the existence of this document, knowing full well what an awful thing this is the contract I would write to do it. But let me just... Right, let's have a look at it so that you don't think I'm exaggerating here, because this can sound quite hyperbolic. I mean, half of me cannot believe that this is real, simply due to how ridiculously predatory this is. But on the other hand, Games Workshop have proven themselves to be a ridiculously predatory company. And it begins, as awful as it intends to carry on, with the very beginning in the definitions and interpretations parts. I'll try and blow it up on screen here, but do bear with me, the quality is not amazing, and YouTube is undoubtedly going to do its usual thing to the quality as well. First and foremost, confidential information is anything and everything you hear or see from Games Workshop. But the interesting part here is, you are not allowed to talk about the fact that you are talking to Games Workshop or negotiating with them in any way, shape, or form. You are not allowed to mention that you are talking to Games Workshop, and point two, you are not allowed to disclose the existence or terms of this agreement, and furthermore, at the bottom, terms for a period of 36 months. From and including the date of the last disclosure of the confirmation information to the recipient. So you are not allowed to talk about talking to Games Workshop, you are not allowed to mention this agreement even existing for 3 years after. That is insane, and something you would only do if you know for a fact that your agreement is awful. And we swiftly get to the even worse parts. Under obligations of the recipient, it says in 212 that the recipient, the person signing the agreement, may not use or exploit the confidential information in any way except for the purposes for which it was supplied by Games Workshop. This essentially means that Games Workshop dictates to you how you may reveal the information they are giving to you. Now that is a point slightly open to interpretation. It might simply be, hey, we would like you to make a video out of this, or we would like you to make an article out of this, or alternatively, it could go so far as to say, hey, here's a list of things you are required to say and do about our product. Now, there is a point, 241, which says that the recipient is freed of the obligations of paragraph 2 once the product is available to the general public. So theoretically, after making the video for the stated purpose, the content creator could then potentially make a second video with his actual opinions. But that's not going to happen, is it? Since that would essentially be admitting to the fact that you are a paid GW shill. Furthermore, in point 3 here, at the request of GW, and in any event on the completion of the purpose, the recipient shall promptly destroy or return to GW all documents and material, and any copies containing, reflecting, incorporating, or based on the confidential information. Yet further, fairly extreme ass covering to make sure that such documentation like this never see the light of day. This is yet further continued as well in point 314, where the recipient is required to certify in writing to GW that it has complied with the clause and that no party shall make or permit any person to make any public announcement concerning this agreement or the purpose without the prior written consent of the other party. This is then followed by a non-compete and non-solicitation clause, which is also an absolute ridiculousness in an NDA agreement, stating that the recipient must not, without GW's prior permission, at any time during the term, including the 36 months in all due likelihood, canvass, solicit, or otherwise seek the custom of a restricted customer. Restricted customer, in this case, is defined as any person who is at the effective date or who has been at any time during the period of 12 months immediately preceding the effective date, a client or customer or in the habit of dealing with GW. This is both a really goddamn weird restriction to place in an NDA, and also an incredibly expansive one too. And it gets worse at 417, where it states that at any time during the term, do or say anything which may be harmful to the reputation of Games Workshop. And in the very next point, 4.2, the undertakings in this clause 4 or any separate part of it shall be enforceable by Games Workshop, meaning that they can hold you solely to point 417. And let me make it clear as well, with GW being the person in charge of enforcing this and interpreting this, the sentence "do or say anything which may be harmful to the reputation of Games Workshop" is entirely up to GW's own interpretation. This is a gag order, clear and simple. And this is the biggest reason as well why anyone who signs this is nothing more than a Games Workshop sanctioned propaganda apparatus, because they are literally not allowed by the contractual agreement they signed to say anything that may harm Games Workshop's reputation. Any and all criticism, any and all negativity is expressly forbidden by the terms of the agreement as interpreted by Games Workshop. And to further hammer home that this is not an empty threat, this is not simply a line thrown in there to sound good in legalese, we have point 6, which states that the recipient shall indemnify and keep fully indemnified Games Workshop at all times against all liabilities, costs, including legal costs on an indemnity basis, expenses, damages, and losses, including any direct, indirect, or consequential losses, loss of profit, loss of reputation, and all interest, penalties, and other costs and expenses suffered or incurred by Games Workshop arising from, essentially, any breach of the contract. So if you breach 417, you bring harm to the reputation of Games Workshop, they can sue you, and you must pay them to sue you. And you have to pay them the losses as they determined them to be, due to the damage you caused to their reputation. Again, this is not an empty threat. That is not a throwaway line, that 417. That is a legally enforceable threat with a penalty attached to it. The rest of the points are far more normal, though point 14 thrown in there at the end to make sure that any legal dispute has to be settled in England is another slightly unusual one that tends to favour, of course, the creator of the deal. But that's completely irrelevant in the face of the rest of this. This is an absurd agreement that gives no rights whatsoever to the signer. He's not guaranteed certain things. He's not guaranteed a flow of information, or that it be valuable information, or a period of exclusivity, or anything. This is simply a pair of ginormous shackles to be slapped around the wrists of whomever is stupid enough to sign this absolute trash. And again, I just want to really stress this. Any content creator that signs this is doing so solely to screw over his own audience. It is an unspoken expectation that if you go to a fan site, you go to YouTube, you go to any of this, that you will receive an unbiased opinion from a fan, from somebody genuinely interested, somebody who has your interests before the corporation. And if they have signed something like this, which puts the corporation's interest ahead of the customer, and also binds you to secrecy surrounding it, you are either incredibly, criminally idiotic, or actively, knowingly malicious. Those are the only two options here. So, again, let me just wrap it up there, because this is genuinely... No, let me just wrap it up there by saying, once more, we cannot confirm that this is real. And I would be very surprised if Games Workshop commented on it. If they say that, oh no, we would totally never do this, and some brave soul steps up and actually says, no, you did this, they are screwed. They are absolutely screwed. Hell, this borders on illegality. This kind of nonsense right here. This genuinely does. And if they accept it, hell, if they say this is what they do, I mean, hell, I have almost given up hope on the 40k community of being able to mount a proper backlash to Games Workshop's repeated predatory actions, but surely this would do it, you would think. But to wrap it up all the way at the end as well, I want to say that I kind of believe it. Because I have seen more than my fair share of NDAs, and I've seen more than my fair share of awful contracts as well. There are a lot of crooks out there, let's just put it like that. If I was going to show you a awful contract, but written legally by professionals, this would be it. This absolutely would be it. So I am probably inclined to believe it. Make of that what you will, and until next time, I have been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.